Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch for Comics Get Counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 137. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. We're talking Squirrel Girl. So before we get started, thank you to our brand new mayor level patron, Matt, who just joined the show and has signed up for our Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/capes on the couch and subscribe at the $1, $3, or $5 level. We are, unfortunately, for most of you, out of president-level slots. In any case, I do want to add, because Doc, you will find this very interesting, Matt is a nursing instructor who teaches mental health, neuroethics, and clinical.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Welcome aboard.
So I said, you are doing yeoman's work, and we appreciate every single one of you who do this very, very important job. And he says, it's great to find others in the healthcare field who share his love of comics. In his experience, it's pretty few and far between.
Well, I would challenge that and say that there are many people that are underground. And if this allows more of them to come out, then that's an added bonus.
Agreed. So go spread the word. Tell your colleagues about the show. Explain our message. We're destigmatizing the discussions around mental health. We are trying to do our level best to break down those barriers bit by bit and hopefully help people get the assistance that they need. So with that being said, let's dive into someone who doesn't need as much help as most of the other people we cover, because we're going to get into that in just a sec. Squirrel Girl, created by Will Murray and Steve Ditko in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, number 8, winter of 1991. So Doreen Green discovered at 10 years old that she could communicate with squirrels, and she also grew a prehensile tail. She believed she was a mutant right up until a couple of years ago when they did some studies on her and determined that she is medically and legally distinct from a mutant. Probably it's sort of a joke within the comics, but also to differentiate her from the X-Men and their cadre of characters. So at age 14, she attacks Iron Man in an attempt to impress him and hopefully become his sidekick. And she helps him defeat Dr. Doom, who was later revealed to be a Doombot, then revealed to be an imposter, and then revealed to be the real thing.
Hashtag BecauseComics.
So she later joins the Great Lakes Avengers, which is about as Z-list of a team as you could possibly think of. Although I do want to get into Mr. Immortal one of these days, because he is a man with a death wish who cannot fulfill it. And if you read the GLA, I almost said the JLA, Freudian slip there. If you read GLA number 1 and you read about all the trauma that Craig Hollis has undergone in his life, he is someone desperately needing therapy, but we'll get back to him. So Doreen's squirrel sidekick, Monkey Joe, is killed. He is replaced by Tippy-Toe,
who also at one point went by Monkey Joe number 2. Just like a totally random aside.
Very true. So Doreen registers as a hero during Civil War, and it's revealed that she has a crush on Robbie Baldwin, Speedball / Penance, but she finds his new dark persona off-putting because she likes Speedball. She's not really fond of Penance with, ooh, I've got all these spikes sticking into me. I'm so dark and brooding because I killed a bunch of kids. Which, I mean, the trauma is real. Not trying to make light of that. But the way they went about it, we'll get to Robbie one of these days, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
Just a titch. So she serves as nanny to Danielle Cage, the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. And you can go back and listen to our episodes on Luke and Jessica. Danielle's a little young. We're not going to get to her. So In the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which is her first solo series, volumes 1 and 2, she enrolls in Empire State University as a college student majoring in computer science, where she and her roommate Nancy, along with their friends Chipmunk Hunk and Koi Boi, work on balancing schoolwork, saving the world, and managing social lives. Now, I will say this, and for our patrons who have listened to a lot of the trade paperback reviews, you understand art is a very big thing for me because comic books is a visual medium. And if I wanted to just read prose, I would do that. I like comic books because I appreciate the artwork. Having said that, Erica Henderson's artwork, specifically with the faces, is kind of off-putting to me. And Doc is making exaggerations of the faces because it's the exaggerations of the faces that I was making when we were speaking about this episode. Just something about the faces. Nobody makes these over-exaggerated facial expressions. And I understand it's a very cartoony look. I get that. And it's not enough to completely prevent me from reading the book because the writing on it is hilarious. It's very realistic and it's out there, but in a very good way. So I thoroughly enjoy the book. It's just one of those things where I'm looking at the artwork and I'm going, if I could just tweak why are your lips doing that? Why is your mouth doing that? Why are your eyes in that particular, just stop. Can we just tweak it? You're at a 9. I need you at about a 3 with that. Having said that, they're fantastic reads, and I strongly do legitimately encourage you to go out and pick up The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, volumes 1 and 2, because I do think, like I said, it's a great book, and Doreen as a character is wonderful. She is so wonderful, in fact, and well-adjusted. We've really only been able to find 2 issues. One of which was given to us by Jeanine, our present level patron who selected this episode. So we're going to get into those issues right now. Jeanine's issue is that Doreen is incredibly powerful, yet no one addresses it. Here is a character who has defeated Thanos, Galactus, Dr. Doom, a list of very, very powerful villains. She's beaten MODOK. She beat Wolverine. And yet she's kind of perceived as this joke character. And both in universe and out of universe, there's this discussion about how much respect should you put on Squirrel Girl's name? Because someone who can take down these levels of villains is not somebody to be trifled with. And yet you think Squirrel Girl, she can talk to rodents, woohoo, that weighs on her. And that's something that she struggles with, like I said, in universe. And then on a meta level, Squirrel Girl fans, and there are a considerable amount of Doreen Green stands out there, for better or worse, they fight against this perception that she's a joke character. And that's not easy to live with.
Very well said. And I would go so far as to say it's not just the personification of a character. It's when you are in a certain realm of your life, be it vocational, within a family structure, or within a romantic relationship. There's nothing wrong with people finding you entertaining. There's nothing wrong with people thinking that you are the light side of the party. But at the same time, we all have the same or very similar expectations of what we want out of life. And those should be taken just as seriously as anything else. So with that in mind, let's picture that you are trying to be serious about something, and yet people only think of you in one particular line of thought. It makes it tough, especially when they're dealing with their own personal preconceived biases, that you now have to find a way to push through those barriers and somehow still remain accurate to your own personality traits. I'm saying this in a long-winded way, but if you're in a situation where you do you just means people don't give you credit for your work or dismiss you out of hand because they don't think you're as valuable as you have shown, there is a lot of potential for emotional responses that are not going to be healthy for yourself and for those around you. Thankfully, Squirrel Girl doesn't really show that much from that perspective. She definitely shows her emotions. I don't want to say she doesn't. What I mean is when people sometimes think people consider them to be a joke, and I'm going to go back to something that I knew and that Anthony knows growing up. I'm going to make a wrestling reference. So when Chris Jericho faced the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, things like that, when he first entered, he was an incredibly hilarious character. And that is what appealed to me. I loved Chris Jericho as a wrestler. And yet, because also he had these technical abilities, he would put on very good matches with a lot of guys. But because of the initial vein that he went down, he was considered a sideshow. And at one point, his exact words, I remember this, after he had won what you would call, quote unquote, the undisputed championship, he interrupted someone else's promo. I know it was The Rock, but the point is, he screams out, "I am not a joke." And it definitely took things to a new level. And at this point, this man...
Well, to clarify, because The Rock was going to face Jericho for the championship at a particular pay-per-view, The Rock was talking about the pay-per-view after that, in which he was going to defend the championship against someone else. And Jericho said, no, I am not a joke. You will not look past me, you stupid son of a bitch. That's the exact quote, because that promo is burned in my brain. And he was pissed at The Rock.
Right.
We'll throw a link up to that in the show notes.
So the point of that being, everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be seen. And most importantly, they want to be heard and seen at the level that they consider commensurate with their abilities and their accomplishments. There are some people that are incredibly soft-spoken about what they do. And for that reason, they know they're not going to draw as much attention as would otherwise be warranted. But if you're on the opposite end, if you actually do want that, there's nothing wrong with receiving that level of attention. And if you're still not getting it, then the question becomes, how on earth do you not become incredibly bitter? How do you not become angry? How do you still get more of what you want? You still have to, in a way, fight that good fight and make sure that you get exactly the things that you've looked to obtain over the years, while not alienating people for whatever reason, having a difference of opinion about where you stand. That's a lifelong practice. It doesn't have to be as exaggerated as an example as I've given. I mean, there are plenty of people that are underrated and then only found out after they're dead. I mean, think about someone like Van Gogh, who didn't really get his due, and he suffered through a lot in his life, and yet at this point, his name is well remembered. So there are always going to be examples of that in history, but that doesn't do the person any good while they're alive. So from that standpoint, I'm not saying there's an easy fix to it, but I will say that consistency can certainly help, because if your name keeps coming up in a certain circumstance, I like to call it the trivia thing, where, for example, if a name like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in basketball always comes up with certain records and things like that, and yet that's not the first name that comes up when people talk about greatest basketball player of all time. People automatically go to names like Michael Jordan or more modern LeBron James, things like that. And yet it's like, well, wait, who's the one that has the most points ever? Wait, who's the one that has more MVPs than both of them? Wait, who's the one that actually was one of the first to win titles with multiple teams? Wait, and he did it for that long? Oh, wait, longer than all of In other words, if he's the answer to so many trivia questions about something that's considered major in that sport, maybe he didn't get as much credit as he should have in the moment. But if enough people, because of his persistence and the fact that he was also a great advocate for African Americans everywhere, and he actually wrote a couple of books about Sherlock Holmes's brother Mycroft and a few other things that people don't know about the guy. It's amazing how if you just keep doing things very well for the course of your life, no, you may not get exactly the recognition that you think you deserve, but you're going to get way more than anybody could ever imagine. And although it may not quite make the mark, sometimes that can be just enough.
Very poignant. And I think so many of us struggle with this idea of wanting to be accepted, that we sometimes put too much emphasis on it. And I think we collectively, I'm speaking about people in general, we can put too much emphasis on the idea of wanting to be accepted. And it is important. It is a factor. And I'm not saying that it should be ignored or disregarded to want to be accepted and respected by one's peers. But I think ultimately what it comes down to is acceptance of the self and self-respect. And Doreen has that in spades. And I think that's one of the reasons why it occasionally comes up, but it's never a ultimately recurring thing with her, because she knows who she is. She knows what she brings to the table. She doesn't try to be something that she's not. And I think that honesty is one of the reasons why she's endured as a character for as long as she has, because what, yes, kind of started out as a bit of a joke led to her being written as this very self-secure person. And when it really comes down to it, I mean, if you think about it truly, so many issues that we see in the world and so many personality disputes and so many problems stem from people trying to act in a way that is inauthentic to themselves. And then I think if we all kind of take and own ourselves, and what I mean by that is acknowledge and accept and respect who we are, then it reduces, not eliminates, but it will reduce the need for conflict, because you're not acting out of turn. You're not acting in a way that's unusual to you. I know I'm just I'm going off, and I apologize. It's a bit of a tangent, but what I'm trying to circle back to is that Doreen has this power and she knows who and what she is, but she also knows what she's not. And I think that's just as important. So the next issue, and this is only going to be the second issue because, again, of who Squirrel Girl is, that she's very well adjusted as a person. And we go back to like the Nadia Van Dyne episode and the discussion that we had with Jeremy Whitley about her, that aside from the bipolar stuff, Nadia is very aware and secure of who she is, and she's addressing the bipolar disorder. So that's why we've kind of only got two things for Squirrel Girl. Sorry, Jeanine, we're not trying to short you out here.
Although I just realized as you were talking, I may have come up with a third. So stay tuned. We're not there yet, but
that's fair. Yeah, we're not ending the episode. But the second primary issue that I can think of is she's a very positive person. She's a very optimistic individual, and she tends to give people the benefit of the doubt a lot. And sometimes it works for her. Sometimes it doesn't. So a lot of times her optimism works in her favor because she's able to utilize her positivity and her loving nature to her benefit, to get someone on her side who otherwise would not. She utilizes this with Galactus, where she convinces him to find a different planet to eat that is not the Earth. She uses this with Brain Drain, where initially they fight because she perceives him as a villain, which he was, but he wants to make a change. And so she helps him. And then he ultimately ends up being an ally for her. So this does help her out, but it often works against her because it frustrates her, I think, that not everyone shares this optimism and this viewpoint of hers. And that it's a running joke in the Ryan North bit that she punches criminals until they don't want to do crimes anymore. That's how she perceives it. It's not that she's necessarily trying to kick your butt. Yes, she is out to eat nuts and kick butts, but she only wants to kick your butt enough to the point that you stop trying to be a villain. And I think that optimism and the internal struggle that she has with that plays into a lot of who she is as a person and a lot of the stories that she's written into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking specifically of a nurse that I work with, and what I'm about to say is definitely a compliment. The way that he has approached things, he says, I will believe every single word that you say until you give me a reason not to. So the default being that we are all here trying to make the best decisions that we can with the information that we have. And therefore, even if things have not gone according to plan, we know that you had the best of intentions, and I know the road to hell, blah, 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 blah. Having said that, Squirrel Girl is dealing with quote unquote villains. She's dealing with people that clearly are showing that there is a negative side to the actions that they're undertaking, and therefore there's a conflict. If you are going into a situation where you know that there is a conflict, then it may behoove you to modify the approach to, as has been said, trust but verify. And that means that there's a little more due diligence. It's not just whether or not you take something at face value. It's the idea that you're acknowledging that information may have a general positive spin, but there are underlying factors that may disagree with how I wish to proceed with the situation. So once you acknowledge that, it's not something that has to lead to worse conflict. It doesn't have to lead to punching. It doesn't have to lead to arguing. But it acknowledges that when we are done with whatever the discussion is or whatever the circumstances are, we may still not be considered on the same side. And here's a dangerous statement that I'm about to make. And that, for the time being, can be okay. You do not have to have everyone lockstep in unison, saying the exact same thing, doing the exact same thing, all at the exact same time, and still have a meaningful life, still have a productive life, still get through your day without added aggravation and grief. Even if your continued struggle is to make things a little better for yourself and the people around you, that is different than what some other people may think. I know that that is something that I'm saying in a calm manner right now, but I know even for myself, I'll bring it back to one of the most basic points of my job. If I see someone that is clearly having struggles, not sleeping, barely eating, highly argumentative with everyone around them, both in their personal life and when dealing with, let's say, staff or professionals that they're actually trying to seek help from, we give them a treatment plan. We say, okay, based on all of the things you've told me and the things that I've observed, this medication may help you. And that person just says flat out, I am totally against that. I don't see the point. It's against everything I stand for, et cetera, et cetera. Especially in the outpatient setting, then we have a crossroads. And the way that I could approach that is I could be incredibly demanding and I could just yell back at the person, you don't know what you're talking about. I have been doing this for years. I wouldn't steer you wrong. I know that so many people have been helped and I have direct evidence of it. I could show you the literature. I can bring in family members who are also begging and pleading with me to help you, even though you don't want to talk to them. I can do all of that. Or I could throw my hands up and just say, you know what? Do what you want. It's no skin off my nose. I'm not involved in your personal life. They're the ones that are going to deal with the brunt of it. This is something that I get paid for, and I'll go about my day whether you accept this or not. I'm giving like the polar opposite extremes for a reason, because that can happen even if I'm not intending it to happen that way. And even if I don't use those words, I'm going to come down on one side or another with that. It's not going to be like I can be truly in the middle. And yet I know that there's still these gray zones where I'm going to shade it one way or another with the intention that I still want to get a better result. So for some people, it is more hands-on. And I may take that paternal role. Since I'm a male, I say paternal. And I point out, it's interesting that you told me that. And I'm not above you with all of this. I'm grateful that you have that independent spirit. And I want that to continue on. I don't want you to have the horrible consequences that may happen if you stay on this path. And if you would just allow me to walk with you on this path so that things go smoother for you, and just give me this chance for the next week or two with this medication, I want your feedback on what it's doing, and we'll take it from there. On the other hand, I can also point out, well, it's interesting. I certainly can respect that, but you seem like a person that's results oriented. And with that, it seems like you're going to get the feedback that you're looking for from a lot of different people in your life. And if that's the case, then I have the feeling that you're going to be willing to come back to me and talk about this a little further. So even if we're not talking about medication right now, perhaps there's going to be an opportunity in the future for us to explore this. But I also don't want to ignore reality about it. So just keep me in the loop, okay? Those were the two same things that I did before, but just worded slightly differently. And yet, I can tell you, I can't guarantee which one works. I can tell you, though, that it's pretty obvious that Doreen really skews towards just really thinking she has the best of intentions and the best of hearts for everyone involved and expects the same. I can never guarantee reciprocity when it comes to emotional conflicts. It's something that I wish would happen more often, but I also think that the more genuine and yet respectful tone that you can take on both sides, the better the outcome will be. Recognizing that you're not going to get it perfectly right every time, but more often than not, you're going to be in the ballpark.
Well said. I am very curious, though, because I know you went with the two extremes for obvious reasons for the point of comparison. But I would also wager to say that the majority of your interactions definitely fall between that in the spectrum. So I'm wondering what the result of that would be for someone like Doreen if she were to take that middle ground, more of a middle ground approach. But what would that have to do to her internally? Like, what would she have to go through to reach that point where she says, you know what, I'm going to take that middle ground approach? Because would that mean that she's no longer viewing things with the optimism that she normally has? Because I feel that so much of her actions are rooted in that optimism and that wanting to see the best in people and always wanting the best outcome for her and for them. That if she were to take a quote unquote more realistic viewpoint, does that mean that she's more jaded or that something has happened? That's the thing that I'm curious about.
Oh, that's a great point. I don't think you have to change the idea that your optimism is viewing the greatest possibilities of those around you and how you interact with them. I don't think you have to eliminate that. I think you can add, in comic speak, I think you can add the what if. So it's not a matter of changing who you are or how you view the world. It's expanding to incorporate the idea that others may view the world slightly differently and adjusting a little quicker than just plowing forward with your view and then having to fix everything after the fact. So for the planner in you, as I know you certainly will appreciate, not necessarily scripting everything out, but just creating some points ahead of time that might be a little different if things aren't exactly the way that you would love them to be. It's not being jaded. It's saying that this truly is the path that I want. And yet, once in a while, there are a few detours with the goal of getting back on the main path.
That's fair. And I can certainly appreciate and respect that. So you had indicated that you had a potential point 3. We don't script everything out, folks. Sometimes things just come up in the course of conversation and discussion. So lay it on me.
Yeah, this goes to the idea of being able to talk to the woodland creatures. Or if you really Disney-fy it, the whole Snow White getting all those animals to do so much for her. But my point is not the anthropomorphic sort of thing. That's not it at all. It's the idea that she is able to get a glimpse into communication with a certain subset of people that I don't want to say is ostracized, but is not well understood. Thankfully, through the use of technology, we don't really have that happen as much. But remember, even just a century ago, we all had our own bubbles, silos, or whatever you want to call it, of socialization that were so walled off that we had to create stereotypes and caricatures just for the sake of even introducing the idea of what those other people are like. And I'm talking about this on a very broad spectrum. I'm not limiting that to race, to religion, to any other gender, ethnicity, sexuality, all of those things. These, for a long, long time, have been the type of subjects, depending on where you are or when you were born, that were completely taboo. And we didn't even have the language to properly discuss it. So imagine you are one of the few people that can somehow bridge the gap. I mean, we talk about that within race as code switching. You could talk about when people, quote unquote, come out of the closet. You could talk about just people from different nationalities trying to ingratiate themselves into modern culture in other parts of the world. You could talk about refugees. You could talk about people that literally have not known what other people in the world do because they never got exposed to it. And yet your world was changed because someone was able to bridge that gap. That's much less common and much less dramatic now. And yet, if you find yourself in that situation or that circumstance, let's say, I'll be honest, doing my training in Newark, it was interesting with certain gangs, the way that they would talk about other people as if they were subhuman. I'm not joking about that. I'm saying that they were the enemy, and any discussion of peace or whatever, it was off the table because they didn't view them as worth their time. And yet, when I would be on the inpatient unit, people wouldn't know what their affiliations were. And it was fascinating how people, because they had the common, unfortunate, violent backgrounds and trauma that they had experienced, often in groups, they seemed to do very well together. And yet, once they recognized what affiliations the other had, it seemed like that all dissipated. It was as if it never existed in the first place, as if it was a completely made-up construct. I'm going to give a newsflash to some people. That is what we do every day. That is what we do with a lot of things that we don't want to talk about or we're not comfortable talking about. Someone like Squirrel Girl learned a long, long time ago that there's nothing to be ashamed of if you have people that you affiliate with that your other friends say you shouldn't. I'm not talking about people that are violent. I'm not talking about people that are intentionally trying to harm others. I'm saying the idea that for whatever reason your family doesn't accept a certain group and you somehow are a part of that group, but you don't tell anybody, it's okay. I know some people need to hear that right now. And if you do, then I'm letting you know, as long as you're not harming other people, as long as you're not harming yourself, it's okay. You can be, quote unquote, different than everybody else. You can be a little odd. It's not going to harm you. And depending on how you use it in your life, it certainly can help.
Everyone's a little bit weird. Everyone's a little off. As Robin Williams said, we all have a spark of madness. You mustn't lose it. And at least I think for me personally, I appreciate those who are a little off, that are just a little bit different. That's why we're friends. Look at the circle of folks that we're friends with. We're all a little off in different ways, but it's the way the weirdness congeals. And I'll use that term. And if I can say this in a loving and non-disrespectful way, and I hope you all take this in the manner in which I say it, everybody who listens to our show, you're listening to two guys talk about comic books and mental health. Those are not two topics that would normally go well together. So if you're listening to this show, you're a little weird. And you know what? We love you for it. We appreciate you for it. And that's one of the things I will say that has really hit home with me over the past, say, 15, 20 years, that over that time, the notion of weirdness and geekdom / nerddom, the outcasts, the folks who are a little bit different, they're not shunned. They're not pushed to the outskirts anymore. We're in the middle. We have staked our claim and we are here. And damn it, we're not going anywhere. And we're making noise. We're making waves. And I say we because I'm talking about you, me, you and me, Doc, and everybody else listening to this show. You're weird. And that's okay. Embrace it. So if you're talking to squirrels or whatever, you're not hurting anybody, go with it. You're not hurting anybody and you're not hurting yourself, go with it. I say all the time, not here to yuck anybody's yum. And that certainly applies to Doreen. I'm not out here to yuck her yum because it's working for her. She's managed to find a way to make something of it. So on that note, we're going to take a break. We're going to plug our sponsor, BetterHelp, a couple of our friends, and we get back, we'll get into treatment. Stay tuned.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your individual needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist. You can begin communicating within 48 hours.
It isn't a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp has a network of over 15,000 counselors with a broad range of expertise. You can log in and message your counselor anytime and get timely and thoughtful responses. You can also schedule regular video or phone sessions. No waiting room required.
BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if you feel you don't have a good connection. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial help is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/capes, that's better HELP, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional.
Special offer for Capes on the Couch fans. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/capes.
Hey there, I'm Chris from the Geek Peak Podcast here with my two co-hosts, Trent.
What up?
And Brandon.
Yo, yo.
Here at the Geek Peak, we strive to provide you the best content from all across the pop culture multiverse.
Think of us as your content concierge, seeking out all the best movies, TV, games, and music to save your valuable time.
We have a different adult beverage every week, and we like to keep things light and fresh, so come hang out with us.
So check us out on all your favorite podcasting platforms. That's Geek Peak.
Like a mountain!
And check out our site at geekpeakpod.com.
Hey, this is Cullen Bunn, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So treatment in universe for Squirrel Girl. And again, this is another situation. We talk about it all the time. We talk about it with some regularity. How do you help a hero be a better version of themselves.
So in this case, I know that I need some outside input, but I know that the input is something I can't understand. I need Mr. Tiptoe. I need a few of the other creatures that she is able to talk to, and I really need to start diving in because that is an untapped source of not just information about herself, but how she likes to view the world with her confidants. And I know she does that with humans as well. I'm not denying that. But if we're going to talk about in-universe, the area that has the most untapped potential, I would love, for example, to do a session just with her, but have one of her squirrels watch back that session, as long as they're able to understand it, and give feedback from their perspective, because they know her in a way that I don't or anyone else does. And I would use that to start creating the game plan as to how each session would go after that. When I was in training, and not just training, I mean, as professionals, we do this amongst ourselves anyway, maybe not directly recording, but we do critique each other just to make sure we're not missing points with our patients. So if I'm able to do that ahead of time with one of her closest compadres, then I think it would be way more productive for her in ways that I wouldn't anticipate, because on the surface, as you said, it would be much more of what we call the worried well. And I'm sure that still would be the case, but I think we might get more nuance in terms of what she would need help with.
So you're going to bring the squirrels into therapy, but you don't speak squirrel.
Right. Which means that this is going to be one of the most weird, self-guided, introspective sessions that I could ever imagine.
I'm sure Reed or somebody could whip you up a translator so that you don't necessarily have to go through her. Not that I think she would lie about the translation, but...
No, but I think that also gives an opportunity for her own interpretation of the interpretation. We're getting a little meta here, but I think that has some value too. You're right. There's one side where I don't want it, but there's another side where I do. And maybe even comparing the two. That might be the best thing. So,
all right. It's off the beaten path, but then again, so is the character, and also is the entire notion of in-universe treatment. So, out of universe, then, not entirely clear what the analog would be, because obvious.
And once again, as has happened in the past where you say that, I'm like, I got your back, buddy. Don't worry.
Okay, take it away then.
So, based on the issues that we actually addressed, it's the idea of someone who feels like they're not getting their just due. They are, let's say, an overachiever at work, and yet they get passed on for promotions, or they're not getting the bonus because their contract wasn't structured the way they expected it to be, and their family's giving them flack for it. And yet their point is, I'm just trying to help out the best I can. So there can be some emotional responses that are not as productive as the person would like it to be. Well, there's the pragmatic side outside of their own psyche, and then there's the psychological side that we would then address. So the base behavioral practical side is, as our teachers used to say in math, show your work. So the best thing you can do for yourself would be simply ask, what is the expectation of my position? And then actually have that written down or sent in an email. So now you have a paper trail, and you say, oh, in that case, by this time within the next 3 months, I'm supposed to have these things accomplished. And you actually record that, and you demonstrate during your next review that you have done that. And when you send the email, which is an immediate response reply from the very first email that detailed it in the first place, and you point out that either you have met or exceeded those expectations, and then you go to your own HR guidebook and say, okay, based on what is expected, this is usually the amount of compensation, and you've done your homework online about what people in your position make when they meet those criteria. all of a sudden you have a raise and you actually get the expectation that you wanted in the first place. It doesn't always happen that neatly, but at least you've given yourself the better opportunity. Now, that's the pragmatic side. That is not something that traditionally psychiatrists talk about. That's just because I'm a weirdo and I like looking at this stuff. Now, from the psychological, emotional side, let's say none of that works. Let's say that you cannot change the external forces of your situation, which is true for most of us in life in general. And I'm going to extend it beyond work, of course, because that's a very tight niche. From there, the idea is, well, what part do you want to change about how you're processing the information? Do you want to change the fact that you have an intense emotional response that is leading to a bigger motivation so that you want to change your behavior? In which case, we're going right back to what I was just talking about. Or do you want to change the emotional response itself? In which case, you're actually going to have to change the antecedent. I know we're going back to cognitive behavioral therapy because that's what I know. But then you're going to have to change what it is that actually has led to that automatic thought. So if your automatic thought, for example, is, I am angry because the world needs to be more fair to me, then you already have the evidence that the world is not fair. Is your anger going to be productive or not? If your anger is not productive, then the question is, I am angry and I need an outlet besides what I'm doing now, in which case you may need to start doing something that's a physical activity to get that aggression out so that you are allowing yourself basically to function a little better. Or it could be, and this is another scary one, I'm not getting the things that I deserve because I actually am not worthy of it. If that's the case, that leads to depression. If that's how it's being viewed, then once again, you actually have the information, if you had done the first thing in the first place, that would show like, well, wait a minute. There's actually evidence directly to contradict that, in which case you don't necessarily have to feel that way, but you're going to have to create that evidence for yourself. Then forget about emails to your boss or supervisor or whatever. Then you're doing a journal to yourself and you're reminding yourself of the things that you said that you were going to accomplish, and then note the times that you've exceeded it, not just matched your own expectations. And that's how you would start to change how you're feeling about that particular thing. So there's plenty of other variations. This is just a brief example of the things that, a person can do. And depending on the type of therapist you have, they may skew more towards, like I said, that super pragmatic part, or they may skew more towards the emotional part when you don't feel like you have as much control over changing the outside stimuli. So I hope that that's helpful to people. And I know that there are many other ways that people can look at this from a psychotherapeutic standpoint, but that's how my twisted, weird brain works.
Well, I don't think it's that your brain is weird or twisted. I think it's that your brain is trained by a particular schema that you had prior to learning all of these various techniques. And then within that, you're operating from that particular technique. So that's how you're going to view it. So I don't think your brain is weird or twisted. And it's just how it's molded.
And you just did what I wanted you to do. What I mean by that is you demonstrated that you have not just listened to anything that I've said, but you have incorporated the way that a layperson can process things at the same level. And I might get some flack for this, but at the same level as any other therapist. I don't care if they have a PhD, master's degree, MD, DO, any of it. This is what we all do, and we all have our own unique spin on it. I was pointing out with my own internal biases why I use those words. It's because that's my negative view of myself at times that comes out. And the fact that you are my best friend and you're able to point that out to me, and you did it in a way that, in all honesty, was textbook description of therapy, that shows that, holy crap, we are growing together. That is an amazing thing.
Well, I should like to think that after 3.5 years of listening to you ramble on this show, I've picked up at least a tidbit or two. I mean, I know I may not always necessarily pay attention to every single thing you say. And while you're off doing your things, I have another tab open or I'll read something, but I inevitably come back. But, 130 plus episodes, I picked up a thing or two. So can I quit being a lawyer and open up a therapist's office.
So as with most professionals that are not directly run by some sort of agency, anybody can call themselves a therapist. They just can't use any official quote unquote titles. So yes, in theory, you could. I have no idea how that would work out for you, but hey.
It's going to be another one of those things where the hyperfixation kicks in and I will spend all the money and start it. And after 2.5 weeks, it will spectacularly flame out and I'm on to the next thing because I know how your brain works. I'm also well acquainted with how mine works. ADHD is a bitch to deal with. So with all of that being said, we're going to call upon Lisa from Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast, and she is going to help play Doreen, and we're going to get Squirrel Girl on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Squirrel Girl. I'm Dr. Issues.
Oh, I know who you are. I have your trading card.
What?
Oh, Deadpool came up with trading cards for all kinds of heroes and villains and other associated characters.
But I'm not a...
Now that I'm seeing you in person, though, I think the artist didn't capture your features well at all.
I am so confused.
Sorry, I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Let's start over. Hi, I'm Doree, Squirrel Girl.
I know your name, but we can go with Squirrel Girl if you'd like.
Aw, how did you discover that? My totally secret identity is totally a secret. Unless... Can you talk to squirrels too?
No, I can't say that I can. Although I honestly haven't tried. Anyway, I'm not supposed to be the focus of an encounter. How can I help you?
Can I get an autograph?
You are really taking this card thing to heart, huh?
Is that a yes?
Short answer, no. Long answer, only if you actually discuss something that's worth being in a psychiatrist's office for besides giving off fangirl vibes.
Aw, well, aren't you a party pooper? Okay, then. Help me deal with squirrels.
Well, I would need to know a little bit about their personalities. Is there some sort of baseline compatible with humans and a type of sentience I'd be used to?
They are way more capable of bridging the gap between humanity and squirreldom than you'd think. They can be moody and petty and impulsive as anyone you've ever treated. I'm sure of that.
I usually see you pictured with one squirrel, though. Obviously, you have favorites, and pets are certainly part of the family.
Do you consider your child to be a pet, then?
Well, no. I can see how my wording can make things sound awkward. Look, I'm sure to make plenty of mistakes.
So that part of the card is true.
Does that card say anything good about me?
I thought you weren't going to talk about yourself.
Only because you brought it back up again. So, back to it. You're close to squirrels. How does that compare to humans around you?
Not bad. Actually, I think I can relate to just about anything that wants to talk.
That's wonderful. Do you have an example?
I was nice to Galactus, so he didn't eat Earth.
You saved all of us from something that could eradicate us with hunger, all by being nice to him? You shoot away an omnipotent being? I've done my research. You defeated multiple villains with an army of creatures the average person ignores or actively tries to avoid. Life doesn't usually work out that way.
It does for me. Are you calling me a liar?
No. In fact, you may be the most honest patient I've had in a while. But that's not something I can help you improve. I mean, what's something that you consider to be a weakness?
Sometimes I think I'm too nice.
Oh, I've definitely heard that before. You don't want to give too much of yourself to others and leave little time for yourself. So what would you say is the ideal balance for you?
Maybe it's stereotypical, but how about 50-50?
50-50 of what? There's more than two sides to a person's life.
Not necessarily. Half for me, half for everyone else.
I mean, spiritual, physical, family and friends, vocational. You're telling me that it all just comes down to 50-50.
Yup. Works for me. Works for my teammates. It probably doesn't work for my enemies, but that's why I win.
I don't want to lose track of you're saying you're too nice, and yet you're giving me an amazing, elegant schema for which you view life. What's off kilter?
I babysit too much.
So don't do it as much.
Really? That makes so much sense. Then I would have more time to do other things. Wow! I needed to hear that. Thank you so much.
Look, you don't have to bait me into thinking.
Sometimes I think it takes a professional like you to remind a regular old super being like me about the little things. That intelligence rating on your card is spot on.
Wait, what? I'm considered intelligent? Okay, at what rank?
Ooh, nice try, but I learned my lesson. You don't want to talk about yourself or that silly card.
But I thought you wanted me to sign it.
I suppose it would add to the value. Although we don't have any way to verify the signature and the CGC is backed up like crazy these days. Fine, here you go.
And now that I have it, let me take a look. A 3? That's it?
It's out of 7, so it's not as bad as it sounds.
You're not helping.
I'm only a 3 too. So is Captain America.
Ooh, I'm with him. I'm with him, but he's the very essence of what a hero's supposed to be. I mean, I gushed to him. Oh, oops.
I knew it. You're just like all of us. And yet, you still help everyone you see. We're not so different.
Except you have squirrel powers.
Are you going to keep saying that?
As long as you keep saying I'm just like you.
Then how can you bridge the gap between people who can't see the common stuff?
You just summarized my whole life's goal to make sure I stayed on track. I'm dumbfounded. Okay, how about this? I try to understand more about critter characterization, and you just keep being you, except stick to a basic question I can answer like before.
It's a deal. And I'll bring Tippy-Toe along next time. I'll translate for you.
Okay. So should I bring nuts for him?
Her. And we'll bring our own. She's very particular. No offense.
Understood.
So the only thing I'm concerned with is the potential damage that could happen to your office from having rodents run around inside. I mean, I'm sure she's going to tell them to sit still and be good and all that, but you're still going to have squirrels running around your office.
Yeah. Considering the number of times that I've had walls destroyed and been sent to other planes of existence, I'm not going to worry so much about rodents.
That's fair, but I just wanted you to be clear on that. Probably still going to result in a good deep clean when you're done.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Have to give a major shout out, by the way, to Lisa from the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast for playing Doreen. Lisa, thank you so much for this. She and her husband, Brad, are the hosts of the show, and they explore various dynamics of comic book relationships throughout pop culture and publishing history. And as the person who edits the episodes, let me tell you that when I got Lisa's audio back and began listening to the different takes that she did for Doreen, this is no disrespect to any of the other fantastic guests that we've had on this show, but she just completely bodied this role. She just took the part, and I didn't give any voice direction, and yet she read it the exact way that we had it, like in our heads when we were writing it. And that's a major credit to her. So thank you again, Lisa. And we will definitely be having you on for a future episode. And we'd also, frankly, love to have you and Brad on as guests to just, talk about another relationship episode. So we will have links to the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast in the show notes, but definitely go check them out. So recommended reading is obviously The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, volumes 1 and 2. Again, despite what I said about the artwork at the beginning of the show, I still think it's a great read, and she's just a fun character. And if I'm not mistaken, in some of the later issues or later parts of the book. She is she's based in Union County, at least according to Robbie. He mentions that in our Discord. He said in the paperback series, she's based in Union County, which is where Doc and I are from.
Yep.
Union County, New Jersey. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm just kidding. Yes. The crowded mess that is Union County, New Jersey. Yes. Sorry, that's an inside joke. So, upcoming episodes, we've got Wiccan, then Donna Troy. I have a lot of reading to do for Donna Troy because trying to untangle that mess is not going to be simple. And then Homelander, our first foray into the boys.
Yeah.
Yes, Homelander is a character I've wanted to do for a while. We read the volume 1 of The Boys for Patreon, and I've been watching the show, which I enjoy a lot more than the book. So it's going to be interesting to see how we discuss having to get into the world of the comics when, as you and I discussed when we were covering it, it's a slog to get through because it's just the mindset of everyone in that universe is so horrible. There are no good people in the world of the boys.
Yeah, that's well said.
But it's going to be a lot of fun to play. So thank you once again to our brand new mayor level patron, Matt. You can go to patreon.com/capesonthecouch and subscribe, unlock additional content, early access, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then also join our Discord. We got links to all this in the show notes. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to like, rate, and subscribe, please do so because we appreciate the reviews. And the more folks that like and review us, we get seen and heard a lot more frequently. We climb through the rankings, and that helps us spread the message further, which then in turn helps our listeners. Because again, we're all about destigmatizing mental health here on the show. Also want to say, in case you missed it, we were just recently on Popcorn Psychology, our good friends, and we discussed the Black Panther movie along with Pop Mythology. So you can go check that out do a search for Popcorn Psychology and you can find their episodes. And we've done a couple of back and forth collabs with them. So it's always a good time to chat with Ben, Hannah, and Brittany. And so that's going to wrap it up then for this episode. So Doc,
just make sure you fight buck, tooth, and nail for everything that you want out of life, but just don't go chasing your bushy tail.
Buck, tooth, and nail. I would slap you for that one if we were in person. For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.